back. This is Real with Omar. Today's special guest is she's special for a few reasons. One of the reasons is she's probably the person I've known the longest and that has been on the show, who will ever be on the show, right? We know each other. I'm not going to say how many years because, then we give our age away and we look really good for our age.
You can share it. You can, come on, 20 plus years, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to say almost 30 years. 17.
Yeah.
17, right? First year NYU, 1992. Yeah, that's how far back we go. First woman on my show. Thank you. And I know you canceled me a few times. It's all right. I'm not mad about it. It's just, I got to mention that, everybody thinks it's just easy. Sometimes, you got to make the time. Obviously you work for a very, very prolific company, Pencils of Promise, and that's great. And you're the CEO, and that's fucking incredible. I don't care if I have to curse about it.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about that today. That could be a whole different thing if you want to go into it.
Absolutely.
What I want to talk about today is really some backstory, right? So quick, some backstory. So me and you, we met in like 1992, I believe. We both got into NYU under the Equal Opportunity Program, and we both made the best of it. And, we both ended up graduating. Me and you have had this conversation before. I only know you and Sharon, the only two other people that I know that graduated.
Yeah. We had a group, probably about 20 plus of us, folks of color, if you will.
Right. And I don't know anybody else. Do you?
I don't actually, which makes me sad. I don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, the attrition is a testament to. And then there was the HEOP 50-year anniversary that we tried to get together at, but we didn't get together. I think the biggest thing to that, the one that affected me the most, is I feel like if we get a shot, right? Because equal opportunity, you can play that a couple of different ways, where people will be like, oh, you get a shot, and maybe people are more qualified than you, and blah blah blah. Right. You talk about academia, we could talk about financial, we could talk about all the different, I don't want to say duresses, but the different obstacles that people face.
Absolutely.
And that's the part where you can't really quantify that, right? You can't say, hey man, he's not as qualified, or we give him a shot and then he can't finish. Because financially, me, myself, I took a semester off. I don't know if you remember, because financially,
I do remember.
I had to take a year, and most people would not finish from there. Most people would be like, I forget it. I'm making money now. I don't want to go back to that. And then they don't understand how they're limiting themselves for the future.
Agreed.
And what do you do? I mean, you've worked in the nonprofit sector your whole life, right?
I have.
Right. So you've been helping, if you want to go into a little bit of that.
Sure.
Different people. I mean, I know you were not Speeda, but you tell it. All right. I want people to
absolutely. I mean, listen, I want to kind of piggyback off what you just said a moment ago, because given much of my career now, 25 plus years, and I am now dating myself in the ed sector, but particularly in nonprofit, I've learned that access is one point, right? One point of entry when we recognize that children, many of which look like you and I, are not afforded the same opportunities to attend a really well-supported, well-funded school. So you first start with access, but then there are the obstacles which you referenced that I think people take for granted. There are so many obstacles that we have to overcome. I think back to my own experience, which is very similar to yours. Financially, I struggled. I grew up in poverty. My parents were young, 20 and 21, struggling to make ends meet. And I remember when I received that acceptance letter to NYU, the pride, right? I was beaming with pride. And I know my mom was proud, but her response to me was like, how the hell are you going to pay for that? Right. Because in essence, there wasn't, a college fund that they were saving for.
Right.
So like you, luckily we got into HEOP. There were student loans, right? Those are obstacles oftentimes that kids just like you and I will struggle to finish their academics, but then be,
let me ask you one question. I don't want to
that.
interrupt you, but I have to ask this question, because this is what I hear a lot lately. A lot of parents, I want you to come out of college debt-free. I want you, everything is, don't
That's
go to
in
that
a perfect
college.
world.
Don't go to that college because, you're going to have a lot of debt. Go to this college because you won't have debt.
Right.
So what's your relationship with that? Here's my relationship. My relationship is that I wanted to
healthy debt. I'm all good with healthy debt.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great label. It's debt that you're investing in yourself. And most people don't understand that. They like, I'm like, yeah, all right. So then get a good job. Or if you get out of college and you're in debt, I paid my student loans off last year at 45. So, you know, I ended up finishing my final payment. I felt really good. I felt really accomplished, but I believe that it gave me the skill set and the well-roundedness and the worldliness to be able to compete on a level playing field in corporate America or wherever you want to say it, like on entrepreneurial mindset. I think it just gave me a better edge. Some people just don't believe in that, but I truly do.
It gave you an advantage. It opens doors. There's no getting around it, right? It qualifies us to be able to move in the way we want to move, you know, professionally. And for me, I'm with you. Healthy debt I was okay with. And bear in mind, you know, we didn't come from, you know, upbringings where our family had healthy debt. Like I didn't grow up in a house. I grew up in a small 1-bedroom apartment, right? So when I took on the debt, right, to finance my education at NYU, it felt minimal, right, relative to what I could have come out with in debt. I didn't dorm because I couldn't afford it. And I decided that if I was going to take out loans, it was going to be primarily for my academics. Right. So my car was the last car on the D train. Right. Every morning from the Bronx all the way down to West 4th.
Right. But we're talking about like not the best area of the Bronx either.
Absolutely. No,
that's what people have to kind of understand where we're coming from. You know, we didn't come from like these I call my kids entitled all the time. We didn't come from these great backgrounds. Like even my family had the problem. They were like, "Oh, you're going to NYU, that's great," but I don't really understand. I don't think they understood the gravity of it in terms of
they didn't.
Yeah, because they're like, you know, case, you know, the side thing, like, oh, how is he gonna pay for that? You know, always like, yo, don't worry about that. Like, you're not paying. I'm not asking you to pay for it. Like, you know,
we were first generation.
Absolutely.
Right, first generation college students. So this was new for the entire family.
First generation college students, first generation homeowners. We're breaking a lot of barriers, and my kids now don't know any other way. Whereas when we come up, you know, our families were talking about, oh, if we get into the Section 8 hustle, we'll be okay. And I'm like, yo, I don't want to do that. I want to own my own stuff. Like, you know, like, but the mindset.
Listen, I was evicted. We got evicted from our apartment. Like, you know, the struggle was real.
Right.
You know, nothing was handed us. We certainly weren't entitled. I didn't grow up in an affluent neighborhood. I didn't have a rich uncle that was going to help me and make, you know, connections for me professionally. We had to work hard. Nothing was handed us, right? And I knew that.
What about the fact that, because you come from the Bronx like I do, like the successful people were not doing the right things. The people that I grew up with, like knowing on the street, they weren't doing the right things. So we go to NYU and we start meeting different people that have a tremendous amount of success doing these things,
or wealth,
right? Or wealth. But I'm talking about, like, you know, like your professors have some sort of success. You meet,
of course,
and they bring CEOs to talk to us and stuff like that. And you know, that kind of opened my mind a lot to like, yo, there's a whole different way to live. Like before, it was just the corner, right? And what you guys saw with the flashy cars and all that, and now all of a sudden your mind expands into this whole different realm and says, yo, I can do that. I think that was really an important part of college for me. Besides the academia, you know, the people you meet is cool. The networking,
of course,
cool, but the
networking is huge.
Yeah, and then, but also the perception of it all, right? You can kind of understand, like, yo, this world works in a much bigger way than we ever thought or ever knew until we got here.
It was a different game that neither you or I were prepared for.
Right.
And it was almost, you know, that cliche, you know, building the plane as you're flying it. Right. I was learning on the spot, right? Because I didn't have parents that had gone through that experience that could give me, you know, the pathway and explain how to navigate, right? I had to learn through mentors. I had to learn through friends like you. We learned simultaneously.
And we made a lot of mistakes. Making mistakes.
Oh my God, by far. Absolutely. And I think for me, similar to you, I learned a great deal from my mentors. I learned a great deal from our professors that exposed us, right? In a way that we wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise, because it certainly wasn't happening in my neighborhood or with my respective family. And then one other piece that really did it for me was, if you might recall, I don't know if you remember, Omar, but in sophomore year at NYU, I got into that Inroads program, which was an internship program for students of color. And that just opened my eyes to what was possible. I was able to intern with MetLife Insurance for 4 years. I had a corporate job over the summer, and those mentors and that learning is still the foundation that I point to today relative to how I've been able to excel in my respective career.
it's a different lifestyle. It's a different, I think, you know, you like the whole thing with like social media now, it becomes a thing almost where words to me, certain words mean like I sometimes when I'm talking, like I'm tweeting or whatever, I'm talking to myself, right? So to look at it, because yeah, you're like, yo, man, you got to keep going. So I can look at that shit, like, yo, all right, yeah, I got to keep going because but you know, for us, like we ran it, we did it, we're doing it now still, but we're not talking about something that is an abstract or some sort of theory. We did it, and I think that's a really important part that I want to talk about today. Is like, you know, there's kids out there that, you know, they might not have somebody that might say, hey man, you can do it. And I think us narrating our stories is really important because they got to understand, yo, it's not easy. And
hell no, it's not easy. It's not handed to you. And the way I've explained it was I approached things fearlessly, right? Because I didn't have a lot to lose.
Right.
What was I really going to lose?
You couldn't get any lower, right?
No, right. So there was nothing to lose. So I felt like as a result, I had this fire in my belly, right? To really excel. And funny, you had mentioned that you just finished paying off your student loans. I feel really fortunate that, you know, when I graduated from NYU, I owed $33,000, right? And relatively speaking, we know how much kids come out of college now with.
Oh, my son is in his third year at NYU right now. So
you know,
I'm back
you
to
know
it.
firsthand. You know firsthand, my friend.
I'm back, yeah.
Right. And then for me, I took a year off and I pursued my master's degree. And I feel really blessed that I got a fellowship. So I had a free ride for grad.
Okay.
Put my loans on deferment. And at 23, I was working 35 hours a week, going to obtaining my master's degree full time. And then I wrote a check for $33,000 at 23 to pay off my student loans because I hustled and saved money.
Yeah, how liberating was that?
I still have the check. Do you know I still have the check? It was Citibank. I still have the check, 33,000. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever write another check for 33,000.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
But it felt great. And to
but
be able to
at that moment in your life, that was the biggest check you ever wrote, and probably,
that was huge.
And that was huge money, right?
Huge. I felt every dollar. I felt like literally the blood, sweat, and tears that it took me to save that over more than 10 years to get there, right?
So your relationship with it changes because
oh my God,
I was telling my kid that the other day. I was like, my relationship with education is so much different than yours because my mom did what she could. But you know, divorces happen, deaths happen. You know, at the end of the day, the kids are the collateral damage. And so I had to figure it out. I said with him, I said, look, you're getting scholarships for a lot of it. I got you. He's gonna come out of NYU, no doubt.
Oh, that's a blessing.
Which is incredible, right? But because he's getting 75% of it, maybe scholarship.
Nice.
So I thought that's the least I could do, right? Change.
Absolutely.
But at that same point,
but listen, that's how you create generational wealth, right? In my mind, our parents would have loved to pay for college. They didn't have a pot to piss in. You know, they couldn't do that. For me, I'm in a far better financial situation, right, than my parents were. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give my kids a leg up. Why wouldn't I? If I'm able to do it, they would have done the same.
Right. That's the goal. That's the funny middle part is keeping them, I don't say humble, but keeping humility in their diet. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because they tend to
forget.
I do.
Mm-hmm. And my kids are younger than yours now. I mean, I have my 10-year-old.
The advanced program. I started at 19. I started the master's program early.
I still remember that, boy. Woo! So, and I started later in the game, right? So I'm 46 now. I have a 10-year-old and my 7-year-old. And I work every day to ensure that I am raising kind, empathetic, humble individuals that clearly will never struggle in the way that you and I did, because circumstances are far different for me. But they're going to appreciate everything they have because things will not be handed to them. Because I cannot be the parent of a spoiled child. It won't work for me.
I don't think it works the Latina blood. I don't think we have a special secret sauce that we kind of keep the kids in check with that. Let me ask you a question now, talking about being Latina. So I think, and you can always, you can say, oh, I don't really agree with you, but this is what I think right now, now in 2020, I believe that being brown has certain advantages, right? I believe that. I also believe that we're being looked at a little differently because of what I think we've been able to accomplish over the last decade in terms of making strides in whatever profession.
Right.
But I also believe that our kids will never understand that struggle.
They won't be able to.
Yeah, they can't. And I don't know if I feel good or bad about that, only because I want them to understand. Look, I mean, we can go back to the 50s, like, people can sit on a bus together, right? Or before and I'm saying me and you, because it's not that long ago, where we try to get interviews in certain places, we just weren't hiring that. And not based on our resumes, but just based on, the color of our skin, which is crazy. So now I'm the CEO of my own private money fund, CEO of my own commercial lending platform, and the CEO of my real estate brokerage, right? And you're the CEO of Pencils of Promise. How do you feel as a Latina being at the head of a pretty astute corporation? Do you feel that you're looked at a little differently, or do you consciously, maybe unconsciously, hold yourself up to a higher standard?
I absolutely positively hold myself up to a higher standard. It is innate, right? I mean, I think back to that time at MetLife, and I had, again, great mentors, some of which were folks of color that had really, excelled in their career. Others were, white men or white women that took me under their wing. And they would always tell me, Tanya, if your white counterpart is working hard, you have to work harder. If they run fast, you have to run faster. If they're articulate, you have to be far more articulate. Like, I knew that early on at the tender age of 17, that I wasn't going to have an easy path. And my path wasn't the path that everyone followed, but I was going to do my best to find ways to elevate my voice, elevate my opportunities. And that was through networking. So yeah. And I mean, even to this day, I think there is a grind, right, relative to my career that I can't shake no matter where I sit professionally. So to your point, yes, I'm in a CEO role, and I feel like I have my due gains given everything I've accomplished in the last 25 plus years,
right.
But I still work like I'm at the lowest part of the totem pole. I really do.
And that's why,
and I feel that that's the only way that I can keep myself honest, driven, and hardworking. And for me, in my role, I see a child's face with every dollar I raise, every opportunity that we afford our students at Pencils of Promise. And so I feel like that has enabled me to be successful, that internal fire, right? That fire in your belly, and recognizing that even if you are the CEO, I worked throughout my career and nothing was handed me, and I will still work with that same intensity, right? That urgency.
Here's the crazy part. And you're one of them, so I'm mentioning it. There's I have 5 people on my phone, and the strange coincidence is that they're all the heads of their organizations, right?
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And I have 5 people that I know I can text at any fucking time. And it could be 5. Me and you text at 6 in the morning, 5:30. It doesn't matter,
yeah.
because it's never off, right? But that's what people don't understand. Like, they're like, oh, how'd you do that? Well, you worked how many hours last week? 80. I worked 160. So yeah, I get to go on a nice little vacation with the family to recharge. But when I'm here, it's
you're grinding.
Time.
You are grinding.
And I think that's what the new generation really has to really understand. Like, they think, oh, I work 9 to 5. Yes, you can look at it that way. But if you look at it that way, that's all it will ever be. If it's an entry-level job, you'll never get a promotion. If you treat it for what it is and not what you want it to be, it just stays that way. It just stays that way.
Well, listen, my mentor said that to me. Tanya, don't dress for the job you have. Dress for the job you want, right? All those things were so ingrained, to your point, working hard, putting in the time, going the extra mile, rolling up your sleeve, all of those pillars, if you will, that I kept helped me navigate and be successful, because I recognized I had to work a little harder. Is it fair? Probably not, right? But I knew that if I wanted to excel in the way that you just described, it wasn't going to happen if I wanted to, check out at 5 p.m. or 4:59 and 59
The scary
seconds.
part is that attitude, or that mindset, or that culture, right? The way you think, the way you are, it translates. It translates. And that's the thing that most people don't understand. Like, if you treat one thing like that, you kind of tend to treat other things like that.
It's everything.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
everything.
Right. So the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So if you go ham at your job, when you get home, you got to then find the energy and be a husband and be a father and be whatever it is. And when you're working, you have to be whatever your client needs you to be. And if you're running the company, you have to have the vision and keep everybody aligned so that they can execute. So it just, I just think that some people are like, oh, I felt good today, I wanted to do it today. I'm like, yeah, it's motivation, that's cool. The discipline part though is the days when it's raining outside, maybe your back hurts, or you didn't have a good conversation last night with your spouse or whatever, but you got to get up and shake it off and go do it anyway.
That's every day. That's the way I approach my career, being a mom, being a wife, working out, right? Finding time to work out every morning,
especially
before anyone else wakes
thing.
up, or I won't get it in, right? Like that, it is a discipline that I believe enables you to garner success if you can execute it daily. And to your point, be able to pull from the reserve, right? When you're exhausted, or it's a rainy day, or maybe you didn't have a great conversation with your spouse. Where is that reserve that you pull from so that you can still keep up with your grind? Because sometimes, you know, we are low energy. Sometimes we're not having the best day, but we still have to forge forward.
Right. And your anchor has to be that your vision is clear. Like no matter what, even if like you don't move as fast as you usually move, but you still move. You got to move. Yeah, I tell her, like, you got to move the needle, even if it's a little bit.
I move with urgency.
Right.
You got to move with urgency. And I don't know if this has been your experience. I'll be curious to hear it. You know, in light of this year, 2020 has been a difficult year, right?
Yeah.
Between an economic downturn, a pandemic, and then all of this political and civil unrest, right? Like we have had a perfect storm. And so the running joke in my household was like, oh, I'm CEO by day and I'm homeschool teacher by day. I mean, it was a lot of hats to juggle.
You gotta be whatever
during that shutdown back in March, right? And it was overwhelming. You know, I'd be curious here, you know, from many of your listeners, how they managed to navigate that. I mean, that was a moment where I said, not that I, you know, I love you, Omar, but working women were having it even tougher in that moment to balance.
I'll say there's a double standard. There's a double standard because being a mother is like the hardest job. Being a father is a different job, but being a mother is the nurturing job. And I'm sure the homeschooling thing was really kind of like on you and stuff like that. And then you still got to be accountable and effective at your real job or your paying job. Let's say your paying job, right? Not your real job. But yeah, nobody cares.
And what about the stress of being a CEO? Like in your day-to-day, you're trying to help folks be able to secure their home, but you also have people on payroll, right? There's that additional layer of stress during this economic downturn to say, can I weather this storm without having to lay off staff?
How can I keep my people?
Salary cuts? How do I ensure that I can continue making an impact around the globe with the students I'm serving while simultaneously keeping my team intact? Like there were so many pressures that we had to contend with.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I started this series is I was given an award, I think I told you a while ago, by a friend of mine. He has a pretty big time school and he didn't tell me about it. He just, you know, he's like, oh, you're gonna be at the awards dinner? It was like an honorary thing. I was like, yeah, I'll be there with my wife. You know, we'll be there to support you. We'll buy a table, whatever it was. And I ended up getting an award for being like, you know, an inspiration to the generation. And
I love that.
And I was like, yo, dude, I didn't even know you were giving me an award, first of all. Second, I said, thank you. I said, but, you know, why'd you give me the award? I mean, there's, you know, hundreds of people. And he was he was like, yo, bro, he's like, you don't understand how important it is for the kids to see somebody kind of looks like them, talks like them, from where they're, how important, you know, like to be able to be on a certain level so that their belief level is like, yo, I don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer to be successful. I could do that. I could do, you know, there's so many different options. And I think us growing up, I mean, I think we both have, you know, we've encountered different types of, I don't want to say, I don't know if the word is almost like institutional racism, where they're like, yo, you want to do that? You sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And they're like, you know, like, you get a little bit of friction, a little bit of resistance, and you know, the rare breed pushes through, right? Like it's a rare person says, "Yo, fuck what you said. I'm doing it." Right? A lot of people are like, "Oh, you know," and I think about that all the time when I got that award, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, because I want, if there's a chance that somebody, any kid is out there watching and saying, yo, man, I don't know if I could do this, or, you know, I don't have no money, or I want them to hear these stories, because I'm like, yo, there's a way. There is a way, female or male, you can find a way. How important do you think that is?
Oh God, words don't suffice when I tell you how important it is, and on a lot of levels. So you said so much, and I want to try to unpack a little bit of it. So first and foremost, it means so much for us to see folks that look like us in leadership roles, right? It means so much. I still remember my second grade teacher, Miss Correa, right, who was Latina, and I didn't see a lot of Latin folks in education, or a teacher, right, that looked like me. And at that time, I had been diagnosed with ADHD. I was already being told I probably wasn't going to be able to excel in the same way that others. And Miss Correa believed in me, Omar, and she told my
Miss Belt.
right? You gotta have your Miss Bell, your Miss Correa. And she invested the time, and I still credit her for building my confidence in a moment that there was real fear. And then I think I've kept that with me throughout my life. And so it's not only, you know, folks that you will encounter that may challenge you and say, oh, you know what, don't dream so high, or don't hold that so tightly, because when it's pulled out of your hand, it's really gonna hurt.
That gets me so angry. Shout out to Miss Klemper again. My high school counselor told me not to apply for NYU. I mean, I remember every person who told me no. I remember you. There's no beef, but I remember you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I see you, there's no problem, but I remember
proved you wrong.
Right.
I did it.
Right.
I did it. Right. No, I mean, it was like when I bought my first home, I remember it was like I had all these goals. Omar, I still have the notebook. I need to show it to my daughter Ava. It's in my attic. And I wrote all my goals since I was 11. And it was like, I want to have a house before I'm 30. I want to have, you know, a college degree, all these things that I had, you know, written for myself. And so when I paid off that student debt at 23, I'm like, all right, TikTok, got to get that house before 30. Let's do this.
Right.
I still will never forget, Omar, being at the closing by myself, right? My mom wasn't there. I mean, none of my family members in that moment owned a home. And I bought like Home Buying for Dummies. Like literally, that was my Bible to help me navigate it. I'm not even lying. I still got the book in my attic. And I get the key. I didn't even have a car. I had to take a cab to the house.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I opened the door, and my mom takes a cab from the Bronx to meet me an hour later. So I remember looking around and saying, oh my God, I own this. Like, this is my home.
What do I do now?
Mom comes in and she like literally starts crying. What are you going to do? If something breaks down, there's no super. And it's that fear, right? And I said, you know what, Mom? I'm going to do what I've always done. I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. Got to approach life fearlessly, right? Yeah. Because if you are self-imposing those obstacles, how do you get ahead? Because all these other people are not rooting for you, right? Your teacher wasn't rooting for you to apply to NYU. If you allowed that to get in your head, would you be where you are today? Would I be? No.
Yeah. Self-imposed limitations. Yeah. And people don't understand that they're prisoners of their own mind at times.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Prisoners of their mind. That's
yeah.
I love that story. I never heard that story before. Yeah. All right, so I have another
and then of course I made sure I had ADT that night, right? Because if I was gonna sleep in that house by myself, I wanted to make sure I had an alarm system.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. It was in a nice piece of Jersey, though. I remember that.
Yeah, I bought my first home in Teaneck.
Yeah, I remember that. I've been there. I'd been there one time.
Yep, and it gave me a love for real estate, because I only stayed in that home for a year, turned it around, made a nice killing, and then bought my second home.
Right. Is this your second home now?
No, this is the home I'm in now is actually the fourth house I've purchased.
Look at you on the move. All right. Let me ask you a question. Because I don't struggle with it, but I do find it to be a challenge at times in terms of maintaining relationships, right?
Yes.
You have friends that me and you, we go back a long time. But I don't think I was like a high maintenance friend. I think everybody's living their lives, right? So what would you suggest to people? Like, how can they stay in contact with friends, even though they're not really on the same path, right?
Right.
Because we're all on our own paths.
I mean, Omar, let's be clear. It is so much easier to stay in touch with people than when you and I were navigating that, right? Like when before cell phones, I was hanging out by a phone in the corner waiting for someone to call me back, right? Because they beeped me. I'm like, oh God, they're gonna call me back.
Yeah.
Right. And so there was so much more effort to find ways to stay in touch. I mean, shit, when we started NYU in 92, that's when I got my Hotmail account. Like, I'm like, oh, email. Right? Think about that. Just prior to that,
we're dating the shit out of ourselves right now.
Right?
Remember? No, remember we had to take like a tech class to understand how to use the internet?
Go figure, awesome. Right? So think about it. And yet we found ways to stay in touch well before we had the luxuries of social media and all of these technologies that enable us to do it. I mean, listen, most people have their phone attached to their hand now. Right. That's not the way you and I grew up, right? No, my mom would punish me if the phone was ringing. She's like, no, you're not going to pick up. You can't talk to your friend. I'm like, ah! Now you have kids hiding under their bed, right? You know, texting and on social media. My advice to
my kid takes school. He takes school and they have a chat room inside their Zoom. Like I called him yesterday. I say, "What you doing?" He's like, "Nothing." They have a chat room set up. The teacher's there, and they're not even doing the work. They're talking on the chat, like hanging out.
Listen, that is my 7-year-old, and he's chatting with the teacher. Oh boy, that kid is gonna give me gray hair. He's like, "Hi, Miss Drescher, how are you today?" I'm like, "Look at this 7-year-old." I'm like, "Focus."
Looking good today.
But anyway, to your initial question, networking is key. And I think I've evolved my thinking, right? Early on, it was like, oh, you need to have mentors and you have to network like a demon. What I've learned over time is this networking we're referencing, or even these mentors, it's really relationships, right? You and I have always been strong relationship builders. That is why you and I have been friends for 24 years, right? And we've maintained that, and we've gone in different directions. You've had your respective life, I've had mine, and yet we've always found a way to stay connected. And when we do catch up, it's almost as if no time elapsed.
Absolutely. We get to the important stuff
right away.
Yeah,
and I have a deep love and respect for you, right? Likewise. Like I've always said, Omar's like my brother, and I really mean that. And I think if my advice to those listening in is start from a place of authenticity, right? Build relationships, and ultimately in your quest to meet people and secure mentors and network, it starts with building relationships. I mean, when I go to a networking event, I take someone's business card and I'm immediately turning it over and writing a couple of notes from our conversation so that when I follow up, I can follow up with authenticity and I can reference something we talked about, right? Or if I'm like, oh, you can follow me on Instagram, and then I'll send them a quick message. Again, so many different avenues. LinkedIn is oftentimes underrepresented. People don't realize how crucial LinkedIn is. I leverage it a great deal. I will tell you, Omar, every position I've had, every opportunity that has been afforded me, I've never applied online to a job. It has been someone on LinkedIn, someone in my network that will say, Tanya, call Mike and let him know I sent you. And yes, I'll follow up with a resume and information. But I assure you, it has been because of the deep-rooted relationships I've built. So I cannot emphasize enough how critical it is. I now have also evolved my thinking to saying I have a kitchen cabinet, right? I have all these spices. And if I need a little bit of this or a little bit of that, I know who I need to call. If I need something from Omar, I know where I need to, reach him. And so I ask people, get your kitchen cabinet in place. Make sure you have those 5 people that you could call at any time. I would challenge people listening, who are your 5? Who are your ride and die 5?
Who's your starting 5? That's what I call it, my starting 5. Yeah.
Who are your starting 5, right? Who's on your bench that you can hit up when you need professional guidance, an ear to listen to, a thought partner. If you don't have that, I encourage you to make sure you do.
Develop that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's huge.
First of all, I'm incredibly happy and humble that we finally got together, right? Because we've been trying to do this for a while.
And we'll do it again. We're going to do it again.
We're going to do it in person. I
promise you, we're doing it in person.
All right, cool. You heard it there. I promise you. So
I'm a woman of my word.
As she looks into the camera. Anything besides that? Is there anything you want me to leave? I mean, if people need to contact you or want to donate, it'd be Tanya at Pencils of Promise, or where?
Yeah. Real quick. As you alluded to, I'm CEO at Pencils of Promise. We're an international NGO that is ensuring that children around the globe that look like you and I have access to a quality education. We've built 550 schools around the world. We serve over 100,000 POP students.
That's dope.
And if folks want to make an impact and they want to be philanthropic and support our efforts, they can go to our website, pencilsofpromise.org. If folks want to reach out to me on the website, my email address is right there. I'm on Instagram, Tanya Ramos Pop. Pencils of Promise has their Insta, which is Pencils of Promise. So I encourage you to learn a little bit more. I am so proud because our work is so data driven. So not only are we impacting kids daily, but we're transparent around how we're making that impact. So if there is an opportunity to really think about how you want to stretch your philanthropic dollars, I couldn't recommend a better organization. And yes, I'm biased as CEO. I am. I have to. I mean, there's
absolutely.
the disclaimer.
You believe in your mission.
I believe. I don't take on jobs, Omar. I take on missions, right?
Wow.
Every move I've made has been because I want to be an agent of change. I want to leave the world better than I found it. And I'm extremely humbled and honored to lead this organization. And I would encourage folks, whether it's POP or another organization, now more than ever, given where we're at as a country and economically, our nonprofits really need everyone's support.
Right. Well, there you have it, guys. Tanya Ramos, CEO of Pencils of Promise, friend of mine for at least 30 years.
There it is, done.
We'll be together again soon, and thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.